All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into Cal Newport's really powerful idea of deep work. And we're going to start with a pretty big claim. This is probably the single most valuable skill you can build right now if you want to win in today's economy.
So let's just get right into this quote. Newport points out this crazy paradox, right? Our world is getting louder, more notifications, more distractions, and at the exact same time, the value of just quiet, intense focus is going through the roof. He basically says our professional lives are splitting in two, and this one skill, this is the dividing line between those who thrive and those who kind of get left behind.
To really get why, we have to start with a bit of a harsh truth about the economy. It's a concept that economists call the Great Restructuring. And this isn't some small change. It's a total rewiring of what it even means to be valuable at your job.
Think about it. As AI gets smarter and we're all globally connected, that comfortable, pretty well-paid middle ground in the job market, it's shrinking, and it's shrinking fast. Any task that's easy to write down instructions for is being automated or outsourced. What's left is this huge gap between really high-value work and low-value work. The whole idea of just being average and getting by, well, that era is over.
Okay, so if that middle part of the job market is hollowing out, who's actually winning? Who are the people thriving in this new economy? Well, Newport points to the work of a couple of economists and identifies three very specific groups who aren't just getting by. They're set up to get massive rewards.
What's so useful about this is that it's basically a roadmap. I mean, unless you happen to have a ton of capital to be an owner, your best bet is to aim for one of those first two groups. You either need to get incredibly good at working with complicated technology, or you need to become one of the absolute best in your field, period.
So here's the crucial question, right? What's the common thread? What allows someone to become a high-skilled worker or a superstar in their field? It's not just about getting lucky or having some raw natural talent. It comes down to a very specific, trainable skill.
And it all boils down to mastering two core abilities. These are the things the market values now more than pretty much anything else. If you have these two in your toolkit, you're ready to thrive.
And here they are. This slide perfectly lays out the new rules of the game. Technology is changing so fast, so to be a high-skilled worker, you have to be able to learn complicated stuff, and learn it quickly. And to be a superstar, it's not enough to just be good, you have to create amazing work, at an elite level, over and over again.
So, the big question is, how do you get good at those two things? How do you learn fast and produce at a high level? Well, it turns out both of these abilities are powered by the exact same engine.
And that engine is deep work. It's not about being busy, it's not about answering a million emails. It's about that state of pure, distraction-free concentration, where you are pushing your brain to its limits. That's what creates real value, that's what makes you better, and that's what's so hard for other people or machines to copy.
You know, to learn hard things really quickly, you have to focus like a laser. And this isn't just some nice-sounding metaphor, it's actually biological. When you concentrate hard on one skill, you're firing the same brain circuit again and again and again. And that process actually builds up insulation called myelin around those neurons, making the circuit faster and stronger. You're literally hardwiring the skill into your brain. And then to produce at that elite level, it's not just about putting in more hours. This formula is so simple but so profound. It shows us that the intensity of your focus is a multiplier on your time. So if you can manage to double your focus, you can get the same amount of high-quality work done in half the time. This is the secret weapon of the superstars.
And this isn't just some abstract theory. We see this in action all the time with people who make these incredible jumps in their careers. Let's take a modern example of someone who used this kind of intense focus to totally change their professional life.
So imagine this guy, Jason. He's smart, but he's in this dead-end job, and he's staring that great restructuring right in the face. He knows his job could easily be automated away. He was on the path to becoming average, a footnote. So to get out of that trap, he decided he had to become one of those high-skilled workers, specifically an elite computer programmer. So what'd he do? He didn't just tweak his resume or go to some networking events. He did the total opposite. He went all in on deep work. He quit his job, and for months, he basically disappeared into this bubble of learning, cutting out all distractions to pour his entire mental energy into mastering this one complex skill.
And the result? It absolutely worked. The skills that he forged in that intense period of focus landed him an amazing job that paid double his old salary. His ability to learn something hard, quickly, and deeply was his ticket into one of those winning groups we talked about. I mean, that is the power of deep work.
Which really brings us to the core lesson here. The path from being average to being in demand
It runs directly through your ability to concentrate without distraction. In a world that rewards people who can learn hard things and produce amazing results, the person who can truly focus is the person who wins.
So this is the big takeaway from this first part of Newport's argument. The ability to do deep work isn't just some nice little productivity hack. It's basically the new currency of our economy. In a world that is drowning in distraction, the focused person has the ultimate competitive advantage. So really, the question isn't whether deep work is valuable. We know it is. The real question is, how are you going to protect your time to actually do it?
Have you ever gotten to the end of a long day and just felt completely wiped out? You felt like you were running on a treadmill all day. You were busy for sure, but were you actually productive? That's the huge question at the heart of Cal Newport's fantastic book, Deep Work. And in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly why that happens and, more importantly, what to do about it. So to really get this, let's go all the way back to 1922. The famous psychiatrist Carl Jung, he built this personal retreat, a simple stone house he called the Tower. Now get this. It had no electricity. But it did have one very special room, his private office. A place where he could literally lock the door and just think. No interruptions. And for him, this wasn't some kind of luxury. No, it was an absolute necessity. He knew that to do truly groundbreaking work, you first have to create the space for groundbreaking thought. And Jung, he was definitely not alone in this. You see this pattern of deliberate disconnection over and over with people who create amazing things. I mean, think about Woody Allen. He wrote 44 films over 4 decades using nothing but a manual typewriter. Or J.K. Rowling, who was famous for staying completely off social media while she was writing Harry Potter. Her priority, as she said, was pen and paper. The key thing here is they all made a choice to unplug so they could produce work that would actually last. Okay, so that brings us right back to today. I mean, it's one thing to admire Jung's Tower, right? But how in the world do we apply that lesson now? Our jobs, our classes, our entire social lives, they all pretty much demand that we're always online, always available. So where are we supposed to find our own space to think?
Well, this leads us to the real villain in this story, our modern culture of connectivity. It's this world of constant dings, pings, notifications, and the expectation that we'll respond instantly. And as we're about to see, it's a culture that actively works against the kind of thinking that produces real value.
Does this sound familiar to you? You're trying to study for a big exam, but your phone keeps buzzing with texts. Or you're trying to write an important report, but the email notifications just keep popping up. Newport has a name for this: attention fragmentation. See, every time you switch from one task to another, a little piece of your focus, what he calls an attention residue, gets left behind. So all that constant switching just means you're never, ever giving your full brain power to the thing that's right in front of you. But if it's so bad for us, why do we all do it? It's not because we're lazy. Newport explains it with something called the principle of least resistance. Think about it. It's really hard to measure the value of 1 hour of pure focused thinking. But replying to an email? Bam! That's a visible, check it off the list kind of task. So we naturally drift toward the easy, visible stuff because it feels like we're getting things done, even when we're not. We just take the path of least resistance. Okay, so now that we see the problem pretty clearly, let's get to the diagnosis. This is where Newport gives us 2 really simple but powerful ways to think about all the stuff we do every day: deep work and shallow work. So first up, deep work. This is the good stuff. This is when you're studying for a really tough exam, writing a complex piece of code, or coming up with a new strategy. It's hard, you know? It demands every bit of your concentration with 0 distractions. This is the zone where you create something new and valuable, and it's where you actually get better at what you do. And then there's shallow work. These are all those little logistical tasks that seem to fill up our days but don't really require much brain power. Things like, answering routine emails, sitting in on status meetings, scrolling through feeds. You can do this stuff while you're half distracted. It doesn't create much value, and honestly, almost anyone could do it. This is that busyness that tricks us into thinking we're being productive. And you can really see the difference here, side by side. On the left, you've got the stuff that actually creates value and builds your skills. And on the right, all the low-value logistical stuff. So the really critical question you have to ask yourself is what percentage of your day is spent on the left side of this chart, and how much is on the right? Okay, now let's raise the stakes a bit, because this isn't just about feeling a little more productive each day. Newport argues that understanding this difference between deep and shallow is absolutely vital for your future success. And this all leads to the core idea of the whole book, the deep work hypothesis. It's actually pretty simple. As our world gets more and more distracted, the ability to truly focus is getting rarer and rarer. And because it's so rare, it's becoming incredibly valuable. What that means is, if you can be one of the few people who actually cultivates the skill, you're going to have a massive, almost unfair advantage. You will thrive.
Economists say there are basically 3 groups of people who are going to do really well in this new economy. Now, for most of us, the first 2 are the ones that matter. People who can work creatively with smart machines, and the people who are just the absolute best at what they do, the superstars. So to get into either of those groups, you need 2 core abilities. You have to be able to learn hard things fast, and you have to be able to produce work at an elite level. And guess what? Both of those skills depend entirely on your ability to do deep work. So, we've laid out the problem, and we've defined this superpower called deep work. The obvious question now is, what do we actually do about it? How do we get more of it? So in this explainer, we've really covered the why. We've looked at how our culture of constant connection just shatters our attention, and we've learned to tell the difference between the shallow work that just keeps us busy and the deep work that actually builds our careers. But just knowing why isn't enough, right? So in our next explainers, we're going to dive into the how. We'll walk through Cal Newport's 4 specific practical rules for training your mind, structuring your day, and really making deep work the foundation of how you study and how you work. So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about until next time. When you really look at how you spend your day, are you truly building your skills and creating real value? Or are you just staying busy?
You ever feel like your workday is just this constant battle against distractions? Well, today, we're diving into a really powerful idea from Cal Newport's book, Deep Work. We're going to talk about why our work lives are so fragmented, and this is the cool part, how that exact problem creates a massive opportunity.
So let's just paint a picture here, one that probably feels way too familiar. You finally sit down, you're ready to tackle a big project, something that needs your full brain power, but it honestly feels like the entire world is conspiring against you.
For starters, maybe you work in an open office. They say it's all about serendipity and encouraging the flow of ideas, but let's be real, a lot of the time it's just a source of nonstop visual and auditory distraction.
And then, oh yeah, you've got the chat tools, Ping, Buzz. They are literally built to be addictive. And they create this culture where you're expected to respond right now, pulling you out of your flow for every little thing.
And of course, the big one, your email inbox. It's just this bottomless pit of shallow concerns and vague requests, a constant stream of stuff that completely dominates your day, making sure your mind is never too far from a little bit of stress.
So yeah, this whole mix, the open office, the constant pings, the overflowing inbox, that's just become the new normal. But why? Why are our workplaces designed to be so incredibly fragmented?
Okay, let's get into it. It turns out there are a couple of really powerful forces that are kind of pushing all of us toward this state of constant, shallow activity.
So the first one is something Cal Newport calls the principle of least resistance. And it's simple, right? It's just so much easier to fire off a quick reply to an email than it is to shut everything down and really dig into a complex problem. Our brains are just wired to take that easier path.
In this slide, this just nails the second force perfectly. Busyness has become a stand-in, a proxy for real productivity. Think about it. In a lot of jobs, it's really hard to measure the actual value someone is creating. But you know what's super easy to see? If they're answering emails quickly or if their little light is green on the chat app. So that visible activity gets rewarded, and it creates a culture where looking busy feels way more important than actually making deep progress.
And this brings us to the real kicker. And this quote says it all. All this shallow, visible work might feel productive, right? But it comes with this huge, hidden cognitive cost. All because our attention, it doesn't switch as cleanly as we think it does.
Newport calls this the high cost of switching. So let's actually look at the science of what's going on inside your brain every single time you get pulled away from what you're doing.
A researcher named Sophie Leroy discovered this phenomenon she calls attention residue. I love this term. You can think of it like a cognitive ghost of the last thing you were working on. A little piece of your brain's processing power literally gets left behind, stuck on that previous task.
And this slide really breaks it down, right? You're writing a report, you're in the zone. Then bam, an email pops up. You switch over to read it, but a chunk of your mind is still thinking about the report. So when you switch back, you're less effective. Every single switch, doesn't matter how quick, leaves some of your focus behind.
It basically makes you a little bit worse at whatever you try to do next.
And get this, our brains are practically begging for these distractions. A 2012 study of 205 adults found something pretty startling. The urge to check email and social media was often harder for people to resist than the desire for sleep or even sex. I mean, that's just how powerful the pull of this shallow work really is.
So, what is the big takeaway from all this? This is where we connect all the dots and find that hidden opportunity in all of this modern-day chaos.
Okay, so we've established that our modern work environments are pretty much designed to create this attention residue. They're built to promote shallow, visible work over deep, valuable progress. This is the baseline. This is the default setting for almost everyone.
And because of that, the actual skill of concentrating, without distraction on a tough mental task, the skill of deep work, it's become exceptionally rare in our economy.
And this right here, this is the whole point. In any economy, when something is rare, it becomes valuable. So in a world where pretty much everyone is fragmenting their attention and producing shallow work, the person who can cultivate and apply intense focus, well, you basically have a superpower.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. This frustrating, distracting environment that we all work in, it isn't just a problem we have to deal with. It's actually a massive opportunity for anyone who is willing to do what most other people can't or won't do, and that is to go deep.
Have you ever gotten to the end of a long day, looked at your to-do list, all crossed off, and instead of feeling accomplished, you just feel kind of empty? It is such a frustrating feeling, and according to Cal Newport's fantastic book, Deep Work, there's a really powerful reason for it. So today, we're going to dive in and explore exactly why that is. You know the feeling I'm talking about, right? You've been busy all day long, just bouncing between emails, meetings, and a constant stream of notifications. But that satisfying feeling of a job well done, it just never shows up. You just feel drained. But here's the thing. Cal Newport argues this isn't some personal failing. It's actually a symptom of a specific type of work, and there's a much, much more fulfilling way to go about it. Okay, so let's really break this down. On the left, you've got what Newport calls shallow work. This is all the reactive, low-value stuff. Clearing out an inbox, jumping from meeting to meeting, getting bombarded by notifications. I mean, it feels like work, for sure, but it leaves you feeling drained and stressed out. Now on the right, that's deep work. It's proactive, it's focused, and it's completely distraction-free. You're not just reacting, you're creating, you're solving, you're mastering something. And the feeling you get, it's not just, hey, I'm done, it's this deep, lasting satisfaction. And this gets to the core idea that, well, it changes everything. The solution isn't about finding a whole new job, but about changing how you approach the work you already have. Newport argues that developing the skill of deep work is what gives our efforts meaning. And he makes this case from three really fascinating perspectives, starting with what's actually going on inside your own brain. So first up, we have the neurological argument. This is all about the physical changes that are happening in your brain when you really focus. This isn't just some mental trick. You're literally rewiring yourself to be better. The key biological process here is called myelination. The easiest way to think about it is like adding insulation to an electrical wire. When you focus intensely on one single skill, your brain starts to wrap the neurons involved in a fatty tissue called myelin. This insulation makes that whole brain circuit fire way faster and more efficiently. You're basically giving your brain a hardware upgrade for that specific skill. Okay, so this breaks down the process perfectly. Deep work, that intense, single-minded focus, is what isolates the right circuit in your brain. Then, by practicing that skill, you fire that circuit over and over again. And that is what triggers the myelination process, which strengthens the whole connection. The result? It's not magic. It's just biology. You actually physically become better at what you do. And this is why trying to multitask while you learn is, well, it's pretty much a myth. Trying to learn a new coding language or maybe a new editing software while your phone is buzzing and emails are popping up, it's just neurological chaos. You're firing circuits all over the place, but none of them are getting that focused repetition they need for myelination. Deep work is the answer. It cuts through all that noise and allows your brain to actually build the skill, which leads to real, tangible improvement instead of just, frustration. Okay, so deep work physically makes you better at what you do. Got it. But the benefits don't stop there. And this brings us to the psychological argument, how deep work actually changes your day-to-day experience and can, believe it or not, engineer happiness into your life. So Newport brings in the legendary psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who came up with the idea of flow. And the big shocker from his research, it turns out our best moments, our happiest moments, aren't when we're just relaxing on the couch. Our brains are actually happiest when we are stretched, when we are fully absorbed in a task that is difficult and worthwhile. That state of total engagement, that's deep work. And this all leads to a really profound idea from a researcher named Winifred Gallagher, which Newport highlights. And it's this: your world, your perception of your life, is simply the sum total of what you pay attention to. So if your attention is constantly being yanked towards things that are stressful and trivial, your world is going to feel, well, stressful and trivial. I mean, let's be honest, for a lot of us, our attention lives in our inbox and our notifications. And Newport points out that this is a world of low-grade stress, frustration, and anxiety. By living there all day, we are literally training our brains to see our entire professional life through that negative filter. It's like the perfect recipe for feeling empty and just not satisfied. But the deep life, that offers a totally different path. By deliberately choosing to spend big chunks of your time focusing on a challenging coding problem, or a difficult chapter of a book, or a complex new idea, you are shaping your attention around things with substance and accomplishment. You're actively building a psychological world for yourself that feels rich and important, and just deeply satisfying.
Okay, so deep work makes us better, and it makes us happier. But Newport takes it one step further, connecting it to something even deeper, the philosophical argument. He argues that this kind of focused work taps into this timeless human search for meaning, all through the idea of craftsmanship.
So Newport paints this picture of an old-school artisan, right? Like a master woodworker. They found this profound meaning not just in the chair they made, but in the process, the actual act of honing a skill and applying it with care and respect. That dedication to the craft itself, that's a huge source of human purpose. Now, I know what you might be thinking. That's great for a woodworker, but I'm a programmer or a marketer or a student. But here's Newport's big, brilliant insight. Knowledge work is the modern form of craftsmanship. Writing elegant code, designing a clever marketing campaign, crafting a compelling story. All of these things offer the exact same potential for meaning as shaping wood or forging steel. And that is the key takeaway, right there. You have to see your work, whatever it is, as a craft. It's not just a list of tasks you have to get through. No, it's a skill that you hone, that you apply with real care. And when you adopt this craftsman mindset, you transform your work from a chore into a source of real meaning, connecting what you do every day to this long, dignified tradition of human purpose. All right, so what happens when we pull all three of these threads together, the neurological, the psychological, and the philosophical? What we get is a really clear and compelling vision for a better way to work, and honestly, a better way to live. So let's just recap this, because it's so powerful. Deep work is meaningful on literally every level. Neurologically, you're building a better, more skilled brain. Psychologically, you're taking back control of your attention to create a richer, more positive inner world. And philosophically, you're connecting your daily efforts to that timeless, dignifying tradition of craftsmanship. And this is the ultimate takeaway. That effort that's required for deep work, it's not a burden. It's the very thing that transforms your work from a source of stress into a source of profound, lasting satisfaction. It really is, as Newport says, a key ingredient for a life well lived. I want to leave you with one last really powerful idea from Newport. He basically asks, what if deep, focused effort isn't just some productivity hack, but it's fundamental to who we are as a species? What if we are, at our very core, Homo sapiens dependens, a species that's literally built to thrive in depth? It's a huge thought to carry with you as you decide how you're going to approach your work and your life.
You know that feeling, right? You sit down, you promise yourself, okay, this time I'm going to focus. And then, like 5 minutes later, you're scrolling through your phone, and you don't even know how you got there. Well, the thing is, it's not entirely your fault. Our brains have been kind of rewired for distraction. But the solution isn't to just grit your teeth and try harder. Nope. It's to actually design an environment and retrain your mind for focus. So today, that's what we're going to do. We're turning that frustrating wish for focus into a real, practical skill. We're going to build a fortress for it.
So let's start with the big question that drives us all nuts. We know we need to concentrate, we block off the time, we open the laptop, and yet that little pull towards distraction feels like gravity. Why is there such a huge gap between what we want to do and what we actually end up doing? It turns out wanting it is just not part of the equation.
And look, the science on this is actually really clear. That whole just try harder strategy, it's basically designed to fail. Research from people like Roy Baumeister has shown that willpower isn't some infinite well of self-control. It's more like a muscle. It gets tired. Every time you fight off the urge to check an email or look at a notification, you're using it up. By 3 p.m., that muscle is pretty much exhausted.
So this is the crucial mind shift we have to make. We have to stop just hoping we'll stumble into a magical, uninterrupted hour of focus. It's never going to happen. Instead, we have to become architects of our own attention. We have to build a day and a life that actively protects and encourages deep work, instead of relying on a resource, willpower, that we know is just going to run out.
All right, so that brings us to rule number 1, and it is all about construction. To protect that limited willpower of yours, you've got to build a fortress. I'm talking about an environment and a system that's literally designed to keep the armies of distraction out and make deep work the easiest thing to do. Now, before you start laying any bricks, you need a blueprint, right? And that's what a deep work philosophy is. It's your big picture strategy. We're not talking about the little tactics just yet. This is about deciding, at a high level, how these intense focus sessions are actually going to fit into the messy reality of your life. Okay, so you've basically got 4 main blueprints to choose from. On the extreme end, you've got the monastic approach. Think of a writer in a cabin with no internet, just completely cutting out all the shallow stuff. Then there's bimodal, where you split your time, like maybe a professor takes a whole semester just for research. Journalistic is for the real pros, who can just switch into deep work mode on a 30-minute flight. But honestly, for most of us, the best place to start is the rhythmic philosophy. It's all about making deep work a simple, predictable, daily habit. Any good habit needs a trigger. And that's exactly what a ritual is for your deep work. A ritual isn't about lighting candles or waiting for inspiration to strike. No way. It's a series of simple actions that sends a clear signal to your brain. Hey, it's time to focus now. It just makes getting started so much easier. And a good ritual is super specific. You got to define everything. Where are you going to work? A specific corner of the library? Your desk with the doors shut? For how long? Set a timer for, say, 90 minutes. How are you going to work? Maybe the rule is zero internet, phone in another room. And how are you going to support yourself? Maybe you make a specific kind of coffee right before you start. I mean, think about Charles Darwin. The guy had this incredibly strict, structured routine every single day, and that's what led to his breakthroughs. This is the real secret here. Great thinkers don't just wait around for the focus fairy to show up. They signal that it's time to begin. Over time, the simple act of clearing your desk, pouring that coffee, and setting that timer becomes the cue. Your brain learns the pattern, and concentration becomes less of a fight and more of an automatic response.
Now, getting started is one thing, but knowing how to stop is just as crucial. Your fortress needs a drawbridge you can pull up at the end of the day. A shutdown ritual is so important because it prevents what's called attention residue. You know, when work thoughts just keep buzzing around in your head all night. By taking a few minutes to capture every task and make a plan for tomorrow, you're telling your brain it's safe to power down. And yeah, saying a phrase like shutdown complete might sound a little cheesy, but it's a powerful psychological trigger that the workday is truly over.
So, how do you know if this fortress is actually, working? Well, you have to measure the right thing. See, a lag measure, like the number of papers you publish, is the end result. It's important, but you can't really control it today. A lead measure, on the other hand, tracks the behavior that gets you to the result, like the number of hours you spend in deep work. And that's something you can control.
And this is exactly why keeping a simple scoreboard is so powerful. Seriously, just get a wall calendar and put a big, satisfying check mark for every hour of deep work you complete. It sounds silly, but this simple act turns it into a game you can win. It gives you instant feedback and a feeling of progress, which is the fuel you need to keep going.
Okay, building the fortress is half the battle. But once you've got the walls up and you're blocking outside distractions, you have to deal with the enemy that's already inside, your own brain, which, let's be honest, has been trained to crave novelty 24/7. This rule is all about rewiring your mind for focus. Just think about it for a second. That moment you're waiting in line for coffee, a commercial comes on TV, a single slow moment at your desk. What's the first automatic impulse? Reach for the phone, right? We do it to escape even the tiniest little hint of boredom.
But here's the thing. Every time you do that, you're not just killing time. You're actively doing a rep of a really bad exercise. You are literally weakening your mental muscle for concentration. You're teaching your brain that it needs a constant drip of new, shiny things, which makes it basically incapable of sticking with something hard and, well, kind of boring, like deep work.
And I'm not just being dramatic. The late Stanford professor Clifford Nass studied heavy multitaskers, and what he found was, frankly, terrifying. Their brains were fundamentally different, and not in a good way. They couldn't filter out irrelevant stuff, they couldn't manage their memory, they were just chronically distracted. His exact words were, mental wrecks. Whoa. So what's the fix? Well, it's going to sound kind of weird in our world today. The solution is to practice being bored. Instead of seeing those empty moments as a problem to be solved with your phone, you need to start seeing them as training sessions for your attention span.
So here are your training exercises for your brain. First, schedule your internet time. Don't just dip in and out all day. Set aside specific blocks for it, and the rest of the time you're offline. Second, when you're done with work for the day, be done. Don't just swap work distraction for endless YouTube. Give your mind a real rest. And probably the most important one, next time you're waiting in line, just wait. Look around, think. It feels agonizing at first, but it is essential training for your focus muscle.
Okay, theory is great, but let's bring it all home. We've talked about building the fortress and defending it from within. What does this actually look like on, say, a random Tuesday?
Look, this isn't about becoming a robot. It's about being an architect. It's about being intentional. Notice the big, protected chunks of time for deep work. You're not leaving your most important tasks to chance. And all that shallow stuff, email, meetings, it's batched together so it doesn't leak into your focus time. There's a real lunch break, away from a screen, and the whole day wraps up with that critical shutdown ritual so you can actually switch off. This is what a design day looks like.
All this theory is powerful, for sure, but the real change only happens when you actually do it. This isn't about completely overhauling your entire life by tomorrow. It's about scheduling just one 90-minute deep work session, protecting it like it's the most important thing in your day, and just seeing what happens. So the only real question left is, what are you going to accomplish in your first deep work session?
In a world that feels like it's overflowing with digital noise, how do you actually find the focus to do your best work? Well, today, we're diving into the final game-changing rules from Cal Newport's Deep Work to show you exactly how. So let's start with this question. Take a look at your phone, your laptop. Are those tools really working for you, or are you kind of working for them? Look, this isn't about ditching technology altogether. It's about taking back control. It's about you being the master of your tools, and not the other way around. Think about it. How many apps or accounts do you have just because they offer some tiny little benefit? That's what Newport calls the any benefit mindset, and it's where most of us live. He says we should instead adopt the craftsman approach. A master woodworker doesn't own every tool imaginable. They own the right tools. They very deliberately choose tools that help them create a masterpiece, not just ones that create more clutter. And this craftsman mindset leads us straight to rule number 3, which sounds pretty extreme. Quit social media. But it's not just about deleting your accounts. It's really about applying that strict craftsman's filter to every single tool that's fighting for a piece of your attention. So, how do you become a digital craftsman? Well, it's a simple 3-step process. First, you have to get crystal clear on your goals. What do you really want to accomplish? Second, identify the handful of critical activities that actually get you there. And finally, you put your tools to the test. Does this app significantly help with those key activities, or is it basically just noise? The bar has to be incredibly high for a reason. This quote just cuts right to the heart of it. We spend so much time worrying about what we'll miss if we disconnect, right? That FOMO. But the real question is, what amazing things are we missing out on creating because we're constantly connected? The cost of these tools isn't just a few minutes here and there. It's the deep, valuable work that you're not doing. Okay, so you've decluttered your digital toolbox. Awesome. The next step is to declutter your calendar. And that brings us to the final rule: drain the shallows. We all know what shallow work feels like. It's the endless flood of emails, the pointless meetings, the busy work that fills your entire day, but produces, well, nothing of real value. It's the ultimate thief of deep work. So to beat the shallows, you can't be passive. You can't just wait for inspiration to magically strike. You have to get ruthless with your time. You have to schedule your focus just as carefully as you schedule a meeting. Every single minute needs a mission. And this is what a focus day really looks like. It's called time blocking. See those huge protected chunks for Project Alpha and Write Report? That's where the real progress happens. Everything else, the emails, the random calls, it gets pushed to the margins of the day where it can't derail your focus. Now look, life happens. Your schedule will break. The point isn't to be a perfect robot, it's to be intentional. When things go off the rails, just take a minute and make a new plan. And a huge hack here is to set a hard stop time. If you know you absolutely have to leave at 5:30, you'll be amazed at how fast you cut through the noise and focus only on what's essential. And Jason Fried totally nails it here. That fixed end time, it isn't a limitation, it's actually a feature. It forces you to be deliberate. When you have less time, you spend it more wisely. You become a miser with your minutes, investing them only in the highest value work. So why do all this? Why swim against the current of constant distraction? Because the ability to do deep work isn't just another skill anymore. It might just be the most important professional skill you can build right now. Let's connect all this back to the core idea of the whole book, the deep work hypothesis. It really boils down to two simple, powerful truths about our economy today. Okay, first, the ability to learn complex things fast and produce work at an elite level, well, that's becoming a superpower in today's economy. It's what separates you from the competition, and it's what the market is willing to pay a premium for. And at the exact same time, because of our culture of constant connectivity, open offices, and social media pressure, the number of people who can actually focus for long stretches without distraction is dropping like a rock. This creates a massive opportunity for anyone willing to go against the grain. It's classic economics, high demand and very low supply. As the value of deep work goes up and its rarity increases, the rewards for those who can do it just get bigger and bigger. And that's the bottom line. Deep work is valuable and deep work is rare. That simple fact makes it your ultimate competitive advantage. It's how you go from being just another person doing their job to being indispensable. So you've got the blueprint now. The strategies are simple, but they are not easy. The question on this slide isn't just a suggestion, it's a challenge. What are you going to cut from your schedule tomorrow to make room for the work that truly matters? Your answer could honestly change everything.